Welcome back to Wellbeing Moments series. This is episode 3 and it's titled Unhelpful Thinking Habits. I'm Andy Smith and we're going to explore something that affects all of us, unhelpful thinking habits. These are automatic ways our mind interprets situations subconsciously, often in distorted or exaggerated ways that can leave us feeling either anxious, discouraged, or even sometimes stuck. I'm going to talk through 20 of the most common thinking habits. And to make it easier to understand, I have grouped them into 6 themes. And these themes are extremes in thinking, negative filtering and discounting, emotional reasoning and predictions, responsibility and control, expectations and self-imposed rules, and the final one is catastrophizing and unrealistic beliefs. And for each one, I'll explain what it is, how it may show up in everyday life, what emotional toll it may take, and offer a simple, practical way to shift it. These aren't just concepts. I'll share examples hopefully you may be able to relate to and apply in your own life. And if you're ready to begin, take a deep breath through your nose and let's start. The first theme is called extremes in thinking. This first theme includes habits where we see the world in a rigid black and white term, leaving little room for nuance or compassion, especially towards ourselves. The first habit is called all or nothing thinking. Everything is either a total success or it's a complete failure. An example of this: if I don't get this perfectly right, I'm a failure. The emotional impact can cause the emotions of anxiety or feeling of pressure or even the fear of not being good enough. And the strategy around this one is to look for the grey. Ask yourself, what's partially true here? And an example would be, even if it wasn't perfect, I still showed up and made progress. The second habit is called overgeneralization. And this is about one negative moment which becomes sweeping pattern. And the example, I didn't get hired, I'll never get a good job. The emotional impact on this habit is the feeling of hopelessness or discouragement, even rejection, disappointment, and certainly the feeling I'm not good enough. The strategy here is to look at the specific moment, as after all, often recruitment is not personal. They have a criteria they look for without you knowing what that is. And the example, this one didn't work out, and that's disappointing. But I've had successes before, and I will again. The third habit is called global labeling, or maybe perhaps it's even better as mislabeling. You define yourself or others based on one experience. And the example would be, I'm incompetent because I made a mistake. And that can lead to the emotional impact, the feelings of shame or insecurity, feeling judged, feeling worthless, and even feeling inadequate. The strategy would be about separating actions from the person, e.g., from you. And as an example, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I'm incompetent. It just means I'm human and making mistakes is okay, as I can learn from them. The fourth habit is labeling. You can reduce your entire self to one negative word. And the example of that would be, I'm an idiot. The emotional impact here is the feeling harsh self-judgment, leading to low self-worth, or being dismissive of ourselves, very critical. And the strategy would be to describe the behavior, not the person. So as an example, that wasn't my best moment, but I'm still learning. Now we move on to the second theme, and the title of this is Negative Filtering and Discounting. These habits make it hard to see the full picture, especially the parts that reflect your strengths, efforts, or growth. The fifth habit is mental filter. You zero in on the negative and miss the rest. An example is, I messed up once during the presentation, so it was terrible. That emotional impact can lead us to feel deflation, disappointment, critical of ourselves, judgmental, and certainly no self-compassion. And so the strategy on this would be expand your view. What else is true? The example here would be, yes, I made a mistake, but I also stayed calm and got my message across. The sixth habit is discounting the positive. This is where you dismiss praise or positive experiences and think of them only as flukes. And the example, they were just being nice when we receive a compliment. The emotional impact that we can feel inadequate or we feel sadness, avoidance. Also, sometimes we can have a feeling, it's called imposter syndrome. The strategy is to let the good in, even if it feels uncomfortable. And as an example, even if they were being kind, what they said does have truth to it. The seventh habit is minimalization. You shrink your wins or strengths. It goes very much with the sixth one about not hearing compliments. And the example would be, well, anyone could have done that. The emotional impact to ourselves is that we have self-doubt, we have low confidence, and there is an element here that we lack in self-belief. And it's learning as the strategy to own your effort and capability. And it's important to validate yourself. And as the example here, I worked hard for that result and it mattered. Now we move to the third theme. And this is called emotional reasoning and predictions. In this theme, emotions and assumptions seem like facts, even when the evidence tells us a different story. The eighth habit is emotional reasoning. You assume something is true because it feels true. And as an example, I feel useless, so I must be. Feeling like this the impact can lead us to becoming depressed or withdrawing, feeling insular or isolating. But it's important to remember the strategy here is feelings aren't facts. Check the evidence. And as an example, I feel low right now, but I've done good things in the past and I can in the future, but perhaps just not today. The ninth habit is fortune telling. You predict a negative outcome without proof. An example is, I just know I'll mess this up. And this often is the emotional impact is around feeling anxious, and we may leading to feel avoidant or feeling scared. A lot of the emotions around this is all associated with fear. The strategy, shift from certainty to curiosity. And then an example of this would be, I don't know what will happen, but I can do my best and give it a try. The 10th habit is mind reading. This is where you assume you know what others are thinking, and it's really good. We always think negatively. An example, they think I'm annoying. The emotional impact here can lead us into social anxiety, self consciousness. Again, a lot of emotions associated with fear. So the strategy would be to get curious or ask directly. As an example, acknowledge I can't read their minds. I'll give them benefit of the doubt. Or even the hard ask and ask, sorry, have I annoyed you? The 11th habit is jumping to conclusions. You draw quick, often negative conclusions without evidence. As an example, they didn't text back. They must be mad. The frustration is often when we send texts and people don't respond or immediately. But the emotional impact here is worrying or feeling insecure, or the fear I've upset them or they don't like me anymore. The strategy here is to take a breath and actually consider other explanations. Because, as an example, the people might be busy and unable to respond at the moment. So, check in later. The fourth theme is responsibility and control. These thinking habits can distort how much control we believe we have or don't have over people and situations. The 12th habit is personalization. You take blame for things that aren't your responsibility. As an example, it's my fault they're upset. The emotional impact to us is the feeling of guilt or shame or the need to appease. And the strategy would be to clarify what's yours and what's their responsibilities. What does that mean? The example here would be their feelings matter and I'll reflect on my part, but cannot control, nor am I responsible for their emotions. I'm only responsible for mine. The 13th habit is control fallacies. You feel either fully responsible for everything or powerless to change anything. And an example, if I don't fix this, everything's going to fall apart. The emotional impact to us is the feeling of being burnt out, worrying, or feeling of hopelessness or helplessness, and that overwhelming fear of responsibility. The strategy would be to focus on your circle of influence. And as an example, I can do my best in what I can do. And it's for me to let go of worrying about what's not mine to control. The 14th habit is fallacy of change. You believe others must change for you to be okay. And as an example, we might say, if they cared more for me, I'd feel better. Because this can lead us to have the emotional impact of feeling frustration or resentment, feeling disrespected, unimportant, or even sometimes feeling ignored. And so the strategy here is to shift that focus inwards to ourselves. The example here is it's okay to express what I need to others, but no one is responsible for how I feel. And it's up to me to take care of my own peace and my own emotions. The 15th habit is fallacy of fairness. You expect life to be fair and feel wrong when it isn't. An example, it's not fair that I work harder, but I get overlooked. That can lead to the emotional impact of feeling of bitterness, discouragement, jealousy, or even feeling disrespected. The strategy would be to accept that fairness isn't always part of the equation. Life is not fair. And as the example here is, I can't control fairness, but I can still live by my own values and learn not to judge or compare to others. The fifth theme is about expectations and self imposed rules. These habits reflect pressure from our own internal rule book, one that's often impossibly strict. The 16th habit are should statements. You guilt or pressure yourself with rigid expectations. An example, I should always be calm. Why? Why should you always be calm? But it can lead to the impact of feeling stressed or self criticism or feeling judgmental. And the strategy here would be to trade the should for choice. And so in this example, I'd like to stay calm, but sometimes I won't because I'm human. The 17th habit is being right. And this means you need to win the argument, even at the cost of connection. An example of that is where we say, they need to admit I'm correct. The emotional impact here is about conflict, and we can feel defensive, or when we're talking like that, a sense of arrogance. The strategy is to ask yourself, what matters most? Being right or being heard? And in this example, we don't have to agree. We both can still listen and both be understood. The 18th habit is blaming. This is where we hold others accountable for how we feel. And the example here is, you make me so angry. I think many of us have said that before. And the emotional impact here is that feeling of powerlessness or resentment. And it can lead to being aggressive or feeling let down, or we just hear criticism. And the strategy here again is own your own emotions and needs. For example, I feel upset when that happens, or you say this to me, and ask, can we talk and work out a different way? Now we're on to the final theme. Two more habits to look at. This theme is called catastrophizing and unrealistic beliefs. This theme includes the big, overwhelming thoughts that make everything feel urgent, unfair, or futile. The 19th habit, the penultimate one, is magnification, or better known as catastrophizing. This is where we imagine the worst case scenario and you feel like you are caught up in a rabbit warren, lots of ways to turn, and you don't know which. An example of this is this mistake will ruin everything. The emotional impact is about panic or paralysis, the feeling of helplessness or even hopelessness because we get a sense of being unable to stop ourselves worrying or which is the right path. And the strategy here would be to zoom out and look, how big is this really? Or if you're unable to do that, take a break from the thought and do a practical thing like go and make a cup of tea and then we can come back. But as an example of this, it feels huge right now, but I wonder in a month from now, it might not even matter as much. And finally, the last habit, heaven's reward fallacy. This is where we believe that hard work or sacrifice guarantees a reward. An example, I've tried so hard, why hasn't it got better? This can lead to emotional impact for us to feel disappointment, disillusionment, being judgmental or annoyed, perhaps even bitter. And the strategy here would be to let your values and not the outcome guide you. And this example could be I choose this path because it matters to me, not because it promises a reward. Wow, that was like doing the top 20. Instead of music, we've covered unhelpful thinking habits. Now that you've heard all 20, take a breath. Which ones resonated the most? Can you think of a moment recently where one of these habits showed up? Picture that moment again and let's reflect. What were you thinking? How did it make you feel? And what did you do? Now imagine if you had paused and gently challenged that thought using one of the strategies and examples we've covered, what might have changed? This kind of awareness isn't always comfortable, but it is powerful. It gives you choice, and over time, choice creates change in the way we think. Well, that's it for today. 20 unhelpful thinking habits and the strategies that can help you navigate them with more clarity, compassion, and calm. If this episode has helped and you've spotted a few patterns in your own thinking, I'll hope you keep exploring and practicing these shifts. And until next time, be kind to yourself. This is Andy Smith of Wellbeing with Therapy. Please feel free to contact me, and my email address is wellbeingwiththerapy, all one word, at gmail.com. And I'd like to thank you for listening. If you found this valuable, consider sharing it with someone who might find it useful. Any feedback, don't hesitate to email me. Thanks again, and take care.